in Gladstone Camp meeting. I hope you've been enjoying so far our talks with Dr. Vasquez. If you've joined us from day one, you know that she's talked to us about obesity and stress, hormonal balance, gut health, that was yesterday, and today she will close up with mental health. I hope you enjoy this session. Please remember to share your questions with us in whatever platform you're watching. Share your questions, and she will try to answer all of them after the talk. Enjoy.
Welcome back to our fourth presentation of this week.
Awesome, thank you.
I would highly recommend you that you could watch all the previous presentations in order to understand today's presentation. As we talked about in the first day, stress is a broad word that implies any stimulus that triggers a series of chemical processes that eventually lead to inflammation. For example, if it's a virus, will cause an acute inflammation that it will eventually resolve in a few days. All that disaster that you see in the picture is called oxidative stress. It is the byproduct of that inflammation that our body produces in order to kill a virus, but also it will make us feel with body ache and fatigue. Oxidative stress produces free radicals, molecules that destroy cell membranes and speed up the aging process. They are corrosive, damaging everything like this rusty metal. But we have antioxidants that act like sponges soaking up free radicals. That is why we take vitamin C when we are sick, because it is an antioxidant to alleviate the oxidative stress in our bodies. The problem is that when we are constantly invaded by so many sources of stress at the same time, like processed food, environmental contaminants, light pollution, poor sleep, and hidden infections in the gut, as we talked about in the yesterday, we are under a chronic inflammation state that create an imbalance between the free radicals and antioxidants in the body, which can lead to cell and tissue damage, causing disease states in the brain as well as the body. Because nuts contain a high percentage of oil, they can become rancid very quickly if they aren't stored properly. Our brain also contains a high percentage of fat, around 55% is fat. And this lipid-rich environment makes it highly susceptible to oxidative stress and can easily be damaged or compromised. Anxiety disorders, depression, bipolar disorder, autism, and schizophrenia are all affected by oxidative stress in the body. That's why these conditions can improve with antioxidant-rich advanced nutrient therapy protocols. Free radicals alter not only lipids but also proteins in our DNA. Remember that our DNA is genetic code that carries all the information of our body. It's responsible for creating proteins that are vital ingredients in the creation of hormones, enzymes that we need to do the reactions of biochemical process in our body, and neurotransmitters that are the messengers in our brain. So we can see how harmful it can be. Thanks to antioxidants that protects our DNA, our body will make DNA transcription a possibility. And this is the first step in gene expression. But when our body are biochemically out of balance due to free radicals damage and oxidative stress, it affects our gene expression. Psychiatric disorders have long been challenging arenas in the field of medicine. In the early days, they were often considered a form of celestial punishment for family wrongdoings or individual curses in the form of demonic possession. Thereafter, the idea of generalized internal dysregulation due to unknown causes, often believed to be due to parasitic infection or poisoning, came into being. Barbaric practices for treatment often included corporal punishment to beat the affliction out of someone, with pain as the catalyst for healing. Leeching at one point was considered almost a panacea for all illness, both mental and physical. Thankfully, we have moved on from the dark ages of psychiatry treatment. Since that time, emotional instability was thought to be due to trauma of some time stemming from either parental or societal influences. Relationship challenges produce depression or anxiety. Long periods of sleep deprivation could induce schizophrenic changes. So for centuries, scientists have debated whether mental illness results from inborn or environmental factors. At long last, these arguments are fading away as most experts now agree that both factors are highly important. Schizophrenia and many other mental illnesses involve inherited predispositions but violate classic laws of Mendelian genetics, thereby indicating a strong influence of environment. The new science of epigenetics has shown that gene expression can go awry due to toxic chemicals, emotional trauma, chronic personal failures, medication side effects, nuclear radiation, and abnormal nutrient levels because of the oxidative stress. So what we now know is that most of these mental disorders are epigenetic in nature. So what is epigenetic anyway? I'm going to share this short TED Talk video that explains this hot topic in a simple way.
Here's a conundrum. Identical twins originate from the same DNA, so how can they turn out so different, even in traits that have a significant genetic component? For instance, why might one twin get heart disease at 55 while her sister runs marathons in perfect health? Nature versus nurture has a lot to do with it, but a deeper related answer can be found within something called epigenetics. That's the study of how DNA interacts with the multitude of smaller molecules found within cells, which can activate and deactivate genes. If you think of DNA as a recipe book, those molecules are largely what determine what gets cooked when. They aren't making any conscious choices themselves. Rather, their presence and concentration within cells makes the difference. So how does that work? Genes in DNA are expressed when they're read and transcribed into RNA, which is translated into proteins by structures called ribosomes. And proteins are much of what determines a cell's characteristics and function. Epigenetic changes can boost or interfere with the transcription of specific genes. The most common way interference happens is that DNA, or the proteins it's wrapped around, gets labeled with small chemical tags. The set of all of the chemical tags that are attached to the genome of a given cell is called the epigenome. Some of these, like a methyl group, inhibit gene expression, by derailing the cellular transcription machinery or causing the DNA to coil more tightly, making it inaccessible. The gene is still there, but it's silent. Boosting transcription is essentially the opposite. Some chemical tags will unwind the DNA, making it easier to transcribe, which ramps up production of the associated protein. Epigenetic changes can survive cell division, which means that they could affect an organism for its entire life. Sometimes that's a good thing. Epigenetic changes are part of normal development. The cells in an embryo start with one master genome. As the cells divide, some genes are activated and others inhibited. Over time, through this epigenetic reprogramming, some cells develop into heart cells and others into liver cells. Each of the approximately 200 cell types in your body has essentially the same genome, but its own distinct epigenome. The epigenome also mediates a lifelong dialogue between genes and the environment. The chemical tags that turn genes on and off can be influenced by factors including diet, chemical exposure, and medication. The resulting epigenetic changes can eventually lead to disease if, for example, they turn off a gene that makes a tumor-suppressing protein. Environmentally induced epigenetic changes are part of the reason why genetically identical twins can grow up to have very different lives. As twins get older, their epigenomes diverge, affecting the way they age and their susceptibility to disease. Even social experiences can cause epigenetic changes. In one famous experiment, when mother rats weren't attentive enough to their pups, genes in the babies that help them manage stress were methylated and turned off. And it might not stop with that generation. Most epigenetic marks are erased when egg and sperm cells are formed. But now, researchers think that some of those imprints survive, passing those epigenetic traits on to the next generation. Your mother's or your father's experiences as a child or choices as adults could actually shape your own epigenome. But even though epigenetic changes are sticky, they're not necessarily permanent. A balanced lifestyle that includes a healthy diet, exercise, and avoiding exposure to contaminants may, in the long run, create a healthy epigenome. It's an exciting time to be studying this. Scientists are just beginning to understand how epigenetics could explain mechanisms of human development and aging, as well as the origins of cancer, heart disease, mental illness, addiction, and many other conditions. Meanwhile, new genome editing techniques are making it much easier to identify which epigenetic changes really matter for health and disease. Once we understand how our epigenome influences us, we might be able to influence it too.
Biochemistry can be affected by diet and stressful life events, but the dominant factor often goes back to genetics, or additionally, epigenetics. The environment, diet, toxins, lifestyle can affect the expression of a person's genes, and this alteration in gene expression is called epigenetics. Epigenetics explain why one identical twin may manifest a particular disease while the other does not, even though they have the same genetic and the same predisposition to disease. So epigenetic can turn on or off the genes of certain diseases. A comprehensive metabolic analysis of any person would likely reveal several nutrients that are deficient due to genetics. Some deficiencies might be of minor importance with respect to human functioning, while others could result in serious mental problems. Most human beings have nutrient imbalances due to genetic and environmental factors, and these imbalances can cause mischief in many ways that we are going to discuss today. A typical adult has approximately 100 billion brain cells with an average of 1,000 synaptic connections per cell. Every thought, every action, and emotion involves communication between brain cells that are triggered by special chemicals called neurotransmitters. Many dozens of neurotransmitters have been identified among the more than 100 in the human brain. Much research has been devoted to neurotransmitters that are associated with specific mental disorders, including depression, for example, is related with low serotonin, schizophrenia with dopamine, glutamate, serotonin, anxiety with norepinephrine and GABA, and Parkinson's disease with dopamine also. It is now generally accepted that most mental disorders involve imbalance levels or altered functioning of these critical important brain chemicals. Based on this, we saw a system from our understanding of neurotransmitters imbalance and delve deeper into the realm of serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine manipulation to achieve symptomatic improvement. Tremendous research has yielded to quantifiably impressive armamentarium of psychiatric tools to battle mental health challenges and at least help keep patients stable, if not functional. Categories of medications evolve from antidepressants to anxiolytics to antipsychotics and onto atypical antipsychotics. Without questions, many of these medications have proven functional for many people, yet for many others, the side effects profile proved to be too much to continue, or tolerances developed over time that necessitated dosage adjustment and often increase. The reality is that we do not receive a lifetime supply of brain chemicals at birth. Instead, the brain is a chemical factory that continuously produces serotonin, dopamine, and other neurotransmitters throughout our lifetime. And an underappreciated fact is that the primary raw materials for the synthesis of many neurotransmitters are nutrients that we eat every day in our daily basis. In one hand, we have amino acids that are the smallest part of protein, and we need, on the other hand, vitamins and minerals that you would hear today the name cofactors. These are cofactors, meaning that they are not protein, but they are little helpers, molecules that assist in biochemical transformation in our body. The levels of these ingredients are well regulated for most persons, but gene abnormalities can result in a nutrient deficiency in one hand or an overload in the other hand. The net result can be an abnormal neurotransmitters concentration in a serious mental illness. For example, we have the serotonin synthesis. Synthesis means the production of serotonin. In order to produce serotonin, we would need an amino acid that is called tryptophan, a constituent of protein, and the final reaction step requires vitamin B6 as a cofactor to help that this biochemical process could be done. Then we have the dopamine. In order to make dopamine, we need it's from either two amino acids, and we need iron, folate, but also we need vitamin B6 again. Then we have the norepinephrine. In order to produce the norepinephrine, we produce it from dopamine, and we need copper in order to this be done. Then to produce GABA, we would need zinc and vitamin B6, so we can produce GABA. Neuron cells of consists of a cell body with branching dendrites, signal receivers, and a long wire-like projection called an axon, which conducts the nerve signal. The axon terminals transmit the electrochemical signal across a synapse. The gap between the axon terminal and the receiving cell. Those cells communicate through neurotransmitters. So what is the life cycle of a neurotransmitter? So the first step is the synthesis. We need to produce this one. And this happens with the combination of an amino acid and other nutrients that we just said are minerals and vitamins. And these together with the enzymes are going to produce the neurotransmitters by gene expression. Then our second step would be packaging into vesicles. The neurotransmitters are packaged and stored into vesicles. Then they are released into synapse. That is the space of communication that you can see between the terminal part of a neuron's axon and the next cell. That space is called synapse. Then we have the termination of action by diffusion, destruction, or, this is the most important, the reuptake into cells. Neurotransmitters molecules can be quickly returned to the original cell through transmembrane transporter proteins and packaged into new vesicles for reuse. This reuptake process usually dominates neurotransmitter activity at synapses, and these transporters are the target of most psychiatric medication. For example, the very known Celexa, fluoxetine, Prozac are antidepressants that directly interact with these transporters to inhibit serotonin reuptake. So that way we increase serotonin concentration in the synapse, that space, trapped for a long time, enabling repeated activation of postsynaptic receptors like a ping pong ball bouncing back and forth. Good mental health requires proper neurotransmitter activities at the synapses and the population of transporters. So transporters are continuously produced in the brain by genetic expression, the process by which information in a gene is used to produce a protein. The rate of production of transporters is enhanced by certain nutrients and inhibited by others. If we enhance transporters, we will have less of a neurotransmitter because it will be sucked away into the cell again. But if we inhibited the transporters, we can have more neurotransmitters spending time in the synapses. Epigenetics research has identified several nutrient factors that have a powerful impact on transporters at neurotransmitter synapse, including methionine, SAMe, methylated supplements, folic acid, zinc, and others. In addition, epigenetics research has identified several other nutrients with potential for improving brain functioning. Since nutrient therapy involves normalization of brain chemistry, this approach has a great advantage of minimal adverse side effects. There are a multitude of genetic and environmental aberrations that can produce nutrient imbalances in the brain. If the brain is presented with a severe overload or deficiency of a nutrient required for neurotransmitter synthesis or activity, one can expect that mental problems will result. This understanding has given rise to a new medical approach for the treatment of depression, anxiety, and other types of mental illness called biochemical therapy or nutrient therapy. The primary elements involve diagnosis of nutrient imbalances through testing of blood, urine, and therapies aimed at normalizing nutrient levels in the brain. It represents a natural method of correcting imbalances in neurotransmitter activity. The clinical challenge is to determine the biochemistry of each patient and to develop an individualized treatment aimed at normalizing brain chemistry. For most patients, the benefits of biochemical therapy result from the following. First, step one that we saw in the life cycle on the neurotransmitters. We normalize the concentration of nutrients needed for neurotransmitter synthesis. We talk about the vitamins. We need the vitamins. We need the amino acids. For example, many patients suffering from depression exhibit low levels of vitamin B6, an important cofactor in the last chemical step in serotonin synthesis. These patients may benefit from Prozac or another medication, but nutrient therapy that normalizes brain levels of B6 may be equally effective for some persons. Then we have the step 5 of the neurotransmitter cycle, epigenetic regulation of neurotransmitter activity using target nutrient therapy. To regulate neurotransmitter activity, we can use nutrients to inhibit or enhance an expression of the transporters that you are seeing, depending on what we want. If we want to increase the neurotransmitters, or we want to decrease the amount of the neurotransmitters. And the last one, reducing free radical oxidative stress. For example, with antioxidants therapies, we can protect our DNA. A major advantage of biochemical therapy is the absence of the serious side effects associated with psychiatric medications. This medical approach uses natural chemicals rather than molecules that are foreign to our brain and induce an abnormal condition. Biochemical therapy can be used together with medication and counseling, providing great flexibility to the mental health practitioner. Pioneers like Abraham Hoffer, Carl Pfeiffer began to delve deeper into the world of molecular interactions and dysregulation. They began to reevaluate the role of cofactors in biochemical reactions. What they discovered was truly amazing. Absolute concentrations of cofactors such as vitamin C, zinc, vitamin B6 were relevant to cognitive dysfunction. By evaluating chemical reactions in biosynthetic pathways, these early pioneers developed treatment regimens that not only stabilized patients, but brought them back to thriving status, many without the use of pharmaceutical assistance. Patients with bipolar disorder and catatonic schizophrenia were normalized by correcting underlying imbalance that made these individuals susceptible to the triggers that produce these conditions. But in order to move forward, we actually have to reevaluate certain foundational dictums of traditional medical training. We are taught early in medical school that vitamins bear little relevance outside of corporal health, and that only minor concentrations are necessary to achieve systemic balance. We now understand quite the opposite to be true. William Walls joined Carl Pfeiffer in his research and further elucidated the true capacity of nutrient power, which is in the book that I highly recommend, The Nutrient Power. He and Dr. Pfeiffer studied over 1 million chemical assays in over 30,000 patients with mental illness. Consistently, the same categories of chemical imbalances manifested that, when corrected, yielded positive, if not life-changing results for those treated. And the following are the repeat offenders that creates biochemical imbalances in different mental disorders. We have copper overload, vitamin B6 deficiency, zinc deficiency, methyl and folate imbalances, oxidative stress overload, and amino acid imbalances. But the reality is that a mental illness may involve more than one imbalance. We have the copper overload. Copper plays an important role in the synthesis of neurotransmitters, respiration, immune function, energy metabolism, and growth. In most persons, blood copper levels are kept in a narrow range through the action of specialized proteins that depends on zinc. Unfortunately, many persons diagnosed with mental illness have an inborn tendency for elevated copper levels, and this predisposes them to psychiatric disorders. Copper, as you remember in the previous slide, is a cofactor in the synthesis of norepinephrine and neurotransmitters associated with severe mental illness. Copper overload tends to lower dopamine levels and increase norepinephrine in the brain and cause an imbalance of these neurotransmitters. Imbalances in these important neurotransmitters have been associated with paranoid schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, postpartum depression, ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, autism, and violent behavior. Nutrient therapy to normalize copper levels can be effective in balancing dopamine and norepinephrine levels for these persons. And now you can understand why. Then we have the vitamin B deficiency. Vitamin B6 concentrations in the brain are about 100 times higher than levels in the blood. And this nutrient has important roles in mental functioning. Severe deficiency of vitamin B6 has been associated with irritability, depression, poor short-term memory, and psychosis. This is not surprising since it is required for efficient synthesis of serotonin, dopamine, GABA, three critical important neurotransmitters. Persons with a genetic or acquired B6 deficiency tend to produce insufficient amounts of brain serotonin and prone to clinical depression, OCD, and other mental problems. Vitamin B6 is also required for the synthesis of dopamine and GABA in the brain. A genetic or acquired deficiency of vitamin B6 can result in abnormally low levels of these important neurotransmitters and a myriad of problems, including ADHD, depression, anxiety, and sleep disorders. The thing with the vitamin B6 deficiency is that it affects the whole body, because in addition to the production of neurotransmitters, vitamin B6 is involved in more than 80 biochemical reactions in the body. Between one of those are hormone reproduction that we just talked about that during the second day. So we can see how these nutrient deficiencies not only affect our mental health, but also our overall health. Vitamin B6 deficiency can result in a wide variety of physical symptoms that are often vague and difficult to diagnose. These may include nervousness, insomnia, muscle weakness, and difficulty walking. Since vitamin B6 deficiency is often caused by genetics, very high dosages may be necessary to normalize levels in the bloodstream and brain. Then we have zinc deficiency. Zinc is a trace metal essential to all forms of life. Most healthy human beings receive all the zinc they need from their diet. Zinc deficiency is by far the most frequently observed chemical imbalance in mental health populations. More than 90% of persons diagnosed with depression, behavioral disorders, ADHD, autism, and schizophrenia exhibit depleted plasma zinc levels, ranging from low normal to severe deficiency. And one explanation for this curious fact is that most mental disorders involve oxidative stress that deplete zinc stores in the body. Zinc deficiency has been associated with delayed growth, temper control problems, poor immune function in these days, so important, depression, poor wound healing, epilepsy, anxiety, neurodegenerative disorders, hormone imbalance, and learning problems. Zinc is a component of more than 200 enzymes that have key roles in cell division and genetic expression. Zinc has many important roles in brain function, which include the following. Zinc is a key component of the blood-brain barrier that prevents harmful chemicals from entering our brain. Zinc protein in the brain combat oxidative free radicals that could destroy brain cells and harm the myelin sheath and alter neurotransmitter levels. Zinc deficiency can cause copper overload that can alter levels of dopamine and norepinephrine, and we don't want that. Zinc is required for the efficient conversion of dietary vitamin B6 into the activated form of vitamin B6, which is needed for so many production of neurotransmitters that we just mentioned, the serotonin, the dopamine, the GABA, and many others. And then we have the methyl and folate imbalances. Genetic or acquired imbalances in methyl and folate nutrients may be responsible for more than 50% of all mental illness. This curious phenomenon results from epigenetic that we just talked, is when our genes are affected by the environment, by those nutrient deficiency. And this impact the methyl and folates on the production of transporters that control the synaptic activity. Abnormality in methylation and folate chemistry are common in schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, depression, anxiety, and certain biochemical behavioral disorders. But they are like a seesaw. For the one that need methyl nutrients, they already have folate elevated, so it is contraindicated, and vice versa. And then we have the pyrrole disorder. It is a genetic or acquired tendency for a deficiency of both vitamin B6 and zinc in the body, which are excreted in greater amounts than normal in the urine, resulting in deficiency. Since it involves simultaneous deficiency of both important nutrients, behavioral and physical symptoms are generally more severe in this population. Classic symptoms of pyrrole disorder include high anxiety, frequent mood swings, poor short-term memory, reading disorder, morning nausea, absence of dream recall, and frequent anger and rage. Because of genetic variations, there is biochemical individuality with respect to the ideal dietary intake of specific fatty acids. An indiscriminate use of omega-3 supplements that most people want to take would worsen symptoms of certain patients. For example, most persons with severe pyrrole disorder that we just mentioned, that is the deficiency in zinc and vitamin B6, have sufficient levels of omega-3 oils, but they are very deficient in omega-6. That is why they thrive in primrose oil, which is rich in omega-6. However, they may deteriorate if they supplement with omega-3 alone. In contrast, most depressive and schizophrenics are deficient in omega-3, and they thrive on omega-3 supplements. And the problem gets worse since most persons with depressed levels of zinc, antioxidants, glutathione, selenium are especially sensitive to toxic metals as lead, mercury, and cadmium that worsen the imbalance, and it is a vicious cycle to continue destroying our neurons. We have a 14-year-old female with social anxiety. She was receiving counseling in the school and out of the school. She was taking fluoxetine 4 milligrams for 1.5 months, but because she didn't notice an improvement and she didn't like the side effects of tremors, she stopped the treatment. She was also on melatonin 10 milligrams before bedtime. So because of her clinic presentation of social anxiety, I gave her zinc and vitamin B6 for 3 months. She has some improvement, but not as we wanted. So we did the cryptopyrrole test to check if she excreted zinc and vitamin B6 through the urine, and she was elevated with the levels in the urine of these. Normal levels are under 10, and we can see that she has 23.17. This means that she has pyrrole disorder. We did the blood test that showed that zinc levels were okay since we did 3 months of treatment with zinc, but her ceruloplasmin is low. Ceruloplasmin is the carrier for copper. And even though her copper levels, as you can see, are normal in total, she was elevated in free copper levels because of the ceruloplasmin that was low. And you know from the previous slides that free copper levels elevated can predispose us to have high norepinephrine levels that are very oxidative and causes anxious and anger issues. So we increase the zinc levels and the vitamin C6 because of the pyrrole disorder and some antioxidants for the free copper levels. After 2 months, she did not have more episodes of crying spells and anxiety that she used to have just before going to bed. And this started with the COVID pandemic. So she was very anxious about the future and always crying before bed. And this stopped. She has less episodes of anger. And when she goes to a social meeting, even though she's afraid, her mother helped her in the beginning, and then she can be by herself. And this didn't happen before. So as you can see, these patients with fluoxetine didn't do too much because fluoxetine elevates only serotonin levels. And as you can see, she was having low levels of zinc, vitamin B6 that predisposes to multiple low levels, not only to serotonin, that is what fluoxetine is for, but also to so many others like dopamine, GABA, and high norepinephrine. Counselings play an important role, and for every mental disorder, because not only provide insight, coping mechanism, and self-image repair, but also can have an enduring impact on gene expression. There is evidence that effective counseling can also promote development of new synapses and neural mini columns, thereby permanently improving the microstructure of the brain. Correcting brain chemistry often is not enough, and counseling can enhance the benefits patients can enjoy. For example, in this patient, she has a negative self-image and poor habits because she sometimes go to sleep very late. But that cannot be corrected by chemistry. We need to change that with counseling. So in summary, serotonin, dopamine, and other neurotransmitters, chemicals messengers, are continuously produced in the brain from nutrient raw materials that may be at improper concentrations. Nutrient imbalances can alter gene expression of proteins that govern neurotransmitter activity at the synapses, the communication of the cells of the neurons. Deficiency in antioxidant nutrients can cripple the brain's protection against toxic metals, and so much more. Neuroscientists have identified the nutrients needed for the synthesis of neurotransmitters, gene regulation, and antioxidant protection. And a special blood and urine test can identify imbalances of these nutrients. Biochemical therapies that use chemicals natural to the body can adjust brain levels of key nutrients that have a powerful impact on mental health. Recent progress in brain science has identified the molecular biology of many mental diseases, and this research provides a roadmap for developing effective drug-free therapies aimed at true normalization for the brain. Many experts believe that the need for drug therapies will gradually fade away as science advances. We are in an era of obesity, malnutrition. As you can sense by now, we need our body to heal our brain, and we need our brain to heal our body. The reality is that most of chronic diseases are multifactorial, meaning that they have a combination and layers of causes that produce the imbalance, and that is why there is no such thing as a magic pill. Instead, the approach, it is always multidisciplinary. The key is the perfect balance. When something good is too high, it's bad. When something good is too low, it's bad. When something bad is too high, it's bad. But the balance is only achieved when the whole body is working correctly and together. We are grateful for prescription medications. They bail us out of trouble and death in a case of emergency. I like to compare it to when a visitor comes to our home at the last minute and the house is really messy. We try to shove as much as possible everything into the closet. Has this ever happened to you? This saves us from a rush. But we know that that is not the real solution. We know that we have to deal with the messiness later. But if we keep doing this and we don't take the time to clean, what used to save us one day will also kill us. So we can use the closet for emergency, but we must know that at some point we will have to take the time to clean the kitchen, take out the garbage, tidy up the bedrooms, do the laundry, and vacuum. So when someone comes to tell you that there is a miraculous product that will do all this work for you at once, then you will know that it is a fraud, because you know that such a thing does not exist, that the reality is that you have to work as a team with your family so that everyone can make your home functional again. And just like you need all your family to achieve this, your body needs all your organs in balance in order to be a functional human being. The book of Ministry of Healings in the chapter 8, too little attention is generally given to the preservation of health. It is far better to prevent disease than to know how to treat it when contracted. It is the duty of every person, for his own sake and for the sake of humanity, to inform himself in regard to the laws of life and consciously to obey them. All need to become acquainted with that most wonderful of all organisms, the human body. They should understand the functions of the various organs and the dependence of one upon another for the healthy action of all. They should study the influence of the mind upon the body and of the body upon the mind, and the laws by which they are governed. There is so much to learn, but at least we can see how science is evolving into all of this information. This is a reality that is happening in front of you, but maybe you didn't even know that it was happening. But it is happening, and it is my desire that you can open your eyes and take advantage of this. Nowadays, science has advanced and is giving us all this knowledge that I share with you during these 4 days. Now, what will you do with this knowledge? Healing is a process, it's not an event. So every day we can choose to be in that process or not. Do you really want to be healed? As Jesus asked the paralytic, do you really want to be healed? The same question remains for you today. Do you really want to be healed? The answer to that question will determine your path to a truly whole healing that not only will bless your life, but also the life of your loved ones and the next generation. God bless you.
Dr. Vasquez, thank you again for wrapping up our week with mental health. I think this is a topic that's very common nowadays, mental health, especially with the pandemic that we've been going through. Thank you to those of you who have been joining us. I invite you to please share your questions with us in whatever platform you're watching, and we're here live. Dr. Vasquez will try to answer them. Dr. Vasquez, I have a question. Why is it that, as I mentioned a few seconds ago, with the pandemic and as time goes by, I just feel like mental health mental illnesses just continue to increase more and more. Why is this the case? Why do you think?
Yeah, these 4 days we have been building the knowledge to come to this day. And day 1, day 2, day 3, all of them build to this platform that now we have mental illness is increasing. Because as you see, these environmental toxins could be mental, also the stress, but also the stress of the toxin that are in our environment, the stress of the situation in our world. Everything is gonna cause an oxidative stress in our body. The same as yesterday we talked about the gut, right? So if we don't take care of those, they are going to affect our genes. And that is the problem. That is why it's increasing. Because this next generation, these kids, are suffering mental illness earlier than our generation or our parents' generation. You can see how increasing is because you can see in the children. Okay? So because the genes, these toxins affects the level of the gene, and that is the dangers, that we are not aware of that if we don't take care of our environment, those are affecting our genes. And then when it affects our genes and we keep living in the environment, that triggers all these deficiencies in our brain, in our body, okay? Because yesterday we talked about gut health, and we saw how the microbiota is in charge to make vitamins, the B complex that is so crucial for mental health, and all those anti-inflammatory disease. So if we have a good gut health, that is going to decrease the inflammation, decrease the oxidative stress. So that's why we need all our body functioning. There is no such a thing that you are going to be healthy, but not your liver, not your gut. No, you need everything to work for your brain. And taking care of the brain means taking care of your hormones. We talk about how these imbalances affect our hormones. The same nutrients, this is very interesting, the same nutrients that you need in order to have hormone balance are the same nutrients that you need to produce neurotransmitters.
Wow.
Okay?
That's crazy.
Yeah. So if you are deficient in those nutrients, of course you are going to have hormone imbalance, right? And then eventually you are going to have mental health problems because are the same nutrients. That is the thing that we can think anymore about every organ separated. We need to think as a whole body.
Wow. Thank you for explaining that. Now I can see better how our week wraps up, really building up with stress and obesity, hormones, gut health, and now the result, mental health.
Yeah. So the same thing, gut health. We saw yesterday that the good bacteria is essential to produce the vitamins that we need. It's essential. If we don't have the good bacteria, we won't have those essential vitamins. And also, the problem is that these toxins that surround us, when we don't have a good gut health, these toxins comes and enter our body easily. And those mineral nutritions and vitamin nutritions defend us from that toxins. But if we have the deficiency, they enter like, oh, this is my home. I do whatever you want. So those toxins oxidize our brain, inflame our brain, and make us have more imbalance of this nutrient. So we enter to a vicious cycle. And we can see how these essential nutrients are important to develop, to produce these neurotransmitters for our mental health. So we need to think, medication only think about one neurotransmitter.
I was going to ask you that. Where do we stand on antidepressants and maybe quote unquote quick fixes?
Yeah. That's why medications doesn't work always. You see so many patients that need one, but then another. And even with 5 medications, they don't feel good. Why? Because medication is to target. For example, the case that I shared with you, she was taking fluoxetine that only increase serotonin in your brain. But with the labs that we did, She has zinc deficiency, vitamin B6 deficiency, copper overload, and that made her to have several neurotransmitter deficiencies. So with the medication, only it's going to target one neurotransmitter. But with the nutrient balance, we can target all of them. So that's why this patient felt the difference. She felt better with this approach because now I feel better. But you need in your brain all the neurotransmitters, not only one. And the thing with the medication is that target only one neurotransmitter. And the good thing is that the nutrients also you don't have the side effects. This is a 14 years old. So you can imagine she didn't like the side effects.
Of course.
Right? She was with tremor and she wasn't feeling good. She didn't feel any difference to say, okay, at least I feel well. No, she didn't see any difference, but she was like shaking all the time. So she stopped, right? But even though we are giving the nutrients, I was giving the nutrients to this patient, we need to think the whole thing. And I didn't share so many details because we are gonna be here the whole day. But this girl also have acne. Okay, and acne is related with the gut, with the zinc deficiency that she has. You need zinc to develop your hormones. So she was having problem with her hormones also. So now you can see the whole picture. Okay, now this makes sense. But also we need to think about that stress is gonna trigger more deficiency. Okay, so we need to say to the patient, okay, do you have these nutrients for your brain, but now we need to work on the stress in your body. Maybe it could be mental, so counseling plays a role. Maybe it could be, we need to find the stress. Okay, mental, then we check the gut health. Most of my patients have problem with the gut, so that is a stress for the body. We studied the first day that is the same mechanism as mental stress, all of that. That's why we need to educate ourselves, because it's so many things around that we need to learn how to live day by day, how to live in this modern life, that the reality is that it's affecting our health. But if we don't educate, we just ignore that. But our body is not ignoring that. Okay? So
Not at all.
Not at all. Our body is feeling all these stresses around, even though we don't think about that. We are not aware of that. So that is, if I'm gonna tell you something like a summary of the whole 4 days, is that education is essential to live in these days, that we have so many triggers that can trigger, you are well today and then you are very sick and you don't know why, and you go to the doctor and they don't know what to tell you, so you feel that maybe I am getting crazy, I don't know, because I feel this, but my labs are normal and they keep telling me that I am well, but I don't feeling well. So that is most of my patients come with that frustration, that then when we found the cause, we found the triggers, we can do a treatment as a whole.
I think as a society, we're getting used to having quick results. We want everything fast. And if there's something that I'm learning here is we need to dig deeper. Also, I've seen a growing trend and an opening to mental health and talking about mental health and people seeking therapy. So I'm really glad that we talked about mental health today, but you share with us the science behind it, that it's not just for me to go to counseling. It maybe that you mentioned that may be a layer, but maybe there's something deeper that counseling will not fix because it's physiological.
Yeah, of course. There are so many levels also of deficiencies. For example, if somebody, the genetic part, right? If this person has a deficiency because of genetic, but it's mild, with counseling and a good environment, for example, a child, okay? This child living with good parents, the parents don't yell, don't traumatize the child, and have a good environment, this child is gonna thrive because of the stressors are not that big, so the deficiencies are not, it's gonna keep like, okay? But then when you have a maybe moderate also, but if you have a severe deficiency, and that's when you see, for example, two siblings, one of them have a mental disease and the other not, and you think why they have the same parents, have the same environment, everything is the same, why he has a mental disease and this not, or this tends to have depression and these siblings don't. So that is when the deficiencies are severe, that no matter what you say to this person, oh, why are you sad? Look how many beautiful things around you. You have to be grateful, and you have it. And this person is not their fault. It's not their fault that this person is feeling like that. So we need to understand that even given the right environment, this person have a genetic component, and we need to address that. And the good news is that these therapies, they have been for a long time, but we don't know that, right? But I explained in the presentation that this has been for a long time, and they have been really successful in some patients. Maybe some of them will need the medication, the lowest dosage, and some of them will need the medication. That's why it's very important to find somebody to work, but as a team. In this, is the patient who has the last word. I can give you something, but if you say, my body's telling me that
it's not,
then I have to listen to you. Why your body is reacting like that if I am giving you something good? So we need to think why. And I love it because it's a work as a team with the patient. And if we are willing to work as a team, we're gonna enjoy the journey
and the real results.
Yeah.
Dr. Vasquez, maybe we have someone in the audience who doesn't struggle with mental illness. Maybe there's other diseases, or we're just trying to take this information and say, where can I start? Where can I start reversing, like going and undoing the damage that has already been done? And where can we start with this?
Yeah, start with educating yourself, right? To open your mind is the first thing. If we don't open our mind, we can, because if you study things and it's so new to you and you don't have an open mind, you are gonna close that, or you are gonna shut down the TV or the health talk because you don't have an open mind. So the first thing is to have an open mind, to learn new things. Or always with science, there is so much. For example, PubMed is the library for medicals, for physicians, and this where the studies are, the last study, and there's so much information over there. But for a person that is not physician, that is so boring. For me, so much fun. But find a practitioner that can understand, that have an open mind also, because there is so many new information every day. So if you don't have an open mind physician that is willing to take the time to learn this new research that goes around, you are not going to enjoy these benefits, okay? So that is the same thing, that you can find a practitioner that goes with you together to find the balance in your body. I don't think we need to do it by ourselves, because that is when we get frustrated. That's why we study so much, right? It's a science. You get frustrated, or you are listening to one person and buying supplements, and then you go to the other, and that is crazy. So you need to find somebody for accountability, that person gets to know you and to guide you based on you and your health. That's why in these presentations I talk about general things, because we are so unique, right? If you saw one of the patients that have the rheumatoid arthritis and has breast cancer, if I don't know this person and I give the health presentations, you need to eat vegetables and do your spinach green smoothie every morning. And right, if I give this person that recommendation, this person is going to believe me, right? So this person is going to do everything that I say about this good food. But what happened? Because they have a gut dysbiosis, they accumulate the oxalates that are the residues from those good vegetables. So it's making the worse.
Okay. In that case, it's not what she needs. Right.
Of course.
So I hear you saying that we this is a general talk, and we need specific guidance for each body.
The goal for this patient is someday eat like that, but for now they can't. They can't eat like that because it's make them worse, their conditions. So it is a transition. While we are healing the gut, we are repairing the gut, you need to do this diet, moderate in oxalate, and then when we have healing the gut, so you can go to the ideal diet. Right.
Absolutely.
That is the thing, that it's very dangerous to give everybody eats the same, like women and men. We are so different. And no, if you want to lose some weight, everybody do the same thing. That is from the past. Not anymore. Science is showing us how unique we are. And for me, that is a blessing that we can open our eyes to those knowledge.
Thank you, Dr. Vasquez, for opening our eyes. And I hope that you have been enjoying this week and just taking in all of this information. I'm sure that there's a lot of questions that people have and specific scenarios and circumstances. I would like to remind the audience that if you go to the Camp Meetings app, there are direct links that will take you to find more information and continue to be educated, like Dr. Vasquez said. You mentioned the Hormone Revolution app, an Instagram account, also the Inside Out Detox Challenge. And you also have a website where we can get in touch with you if you would like more information. So please search those links. And thank you, Dr. Vasquez, for being with us this week.
Blessing to everybody.